Welcome back, boils and ghouls, and who's in the mood for some tutti fucking fruity? Before we get into the film proper, make sure to subscribe to this channel and click that little bell thingy to get notified. I post regular movie reviews and gameplays, all with a horror theme to them, so trust me when I say that you won't want to miss what's coming. Want proof of that? Stick around to the end of the episode to find out what movie I'll be discussing next time. After the success of the 2003 film House of a Thousand Corpses, well, success in the loosest of terms, it made its money back anyway. Lionsgate Entertainment turned to Rob Zombie expecting a sequel. And as luck would have it, Zombie was already working on the idea for a sequel. But several years had already passed since Zombie had written House of a Thousand Corpses. It took 3 damn years to release the movie alone. And in all that time, Zombie's writing and directorial style had already changed quite a bit. So much so that Zombie now claims to be embarrassed of House of a Thousand Corpses. While the first movie was campy in a way, Zombie wanted to go for a much grittier and more realistic style for the sequel, The Devil's Rejects. Perhaps because of this, The Devil's Rejects received a little bit more mainstream praise than its predecessor. Again, more in the loosest of terms, we're gonna have to be very precise when talking about Rob Zombie. Critics noticed a clear improvement in Zombie's artistic skills, even comparing him quite often to Quentin Tarantino. They all agreed that Tarantino was the superior filmmaker, sure, but the similarities are hard to deny. Both favor that retro aesthetic, and use as inspiration the sort of cult films that they grew up with. And both have a fascination with endless, weird conversations that have nothing to do with the plot. For Tarantino, it's whether foot massages are sexual, and for Zombie, it's, what's the best way to commit bestiality and necrophilia at the same time? One common complaint against Zombie was that while his movies were entertaining, they lacked social commentary, which made the brutality of the whole thing feel sort of purposeless. And this was sort of a complaint that I had against House of a Thousand Corpses, especially since Zombie intended for us to sympathize with his villains. And this movie expects even more sympathy from you. The movie opens up after the events of the first one, with the police confronting the Firefly family in their home. When the family refuses to cooperate, the police open fire, killing everyone except for Tiny, Mother Firefly, Baby, and Otis. Mother Firefly tries to shoot herself in the head, but fails, and is instead taken into police custody. Meanwhile, Baby and Otis manage to escape the shootout together. Tiny just sort of fucks off. I don't know what happens to him at this point. Baby gives Captain Spaulding a call, because apparently he's her father, and yes, we are just learning about that now. There were some hints in the first movie that Spaulding was somehow connected to the family, but they never revealed how until this movie. Spaulding agrees to meet Baby and Otis to help them out. All they have to do is lay low for a little while. And apparently, they interpret lay low to mean take a group of people hostage in a motel room and torture them for nearly an hour of this movie's runtime. It's pretty brutal too. I can handle torture scenes in a movie, but there did come a point where I started to wonder, why am I watching this? What pleasure can I possibly gain from watching Otis threaten to rape a woman with a gun in front of her husband? I almost wanted to turn this movie off a couple of times. The thing that kept me going was, quite simply, the actors. I said it last time, and I will say it again. Sherry Moon Zombie, Bill Moseley, and Sid Haig are all amazing actors, and while the characters that they're playing are undeniably despicable, they're just charming enough to keep pulling me through. And the strongest moments in the movie are quite simply when the three of them are together, acting like friends despite, everything that's currently happening. That scene where Baby and Spaulding are nagging Otis to stop for ice cream like a couple of kids just leaving a crime scene is probably my favorite thing that Rob Zombie has ever put to film.
Tutti fucking fruity! Listen, there is no fucking ice cream in your fucking future.
After the victims are all dead and Spaulding is officially helping Baby and Otis to escape, that's when the movie takes a turn. One of the officers investigating the murders learns from Mother Firefly that the family is responsible for killing his brother. The officer then kills Mother Firefly, hunts our protagonists down, and proceeds to torture them horrifically. And this inversion is, honestly, what makes this movie stand out among other torture porn flicks for me. There are moments throughout this second half where you can tell that the protagonists are just trying to protect their own family. Baby even offers to take the blame for one of the murders, possibly with the intention of taking the torture on herself and sparing Otis, which, honestly, is probably something I would do in that situation. It's very weird to see. You come from seeing the absolute worst that these characters are capable of, to all of a sudden seeing them undergo similar suffering, and acting in weirdly identifiable ways. It forces you to ask yourself, is this second torture justified? Is it okay to behave like a monster just because someone else does? It's a heavy question, and one that I'm not sure I'm able to contend with, especially considering the first half of the movie affected me so much. Overall, it means that I don't really know how I feel about this movie. It certainly isn't a pleasant viewing experience, and because of that, I don't think it's one that I'll repeat very often. House of a Thousand Corpses definitely had more rewatch value, but The Devil's Rejects is a much more complicated movie than House of a Thousand Corpses ever was. That isn't to say much. This isn't some sort of political commentary or anything, but it does force you to think a little bit, and I appreciate it for that. And maybe the fact that this movie is uncomfortable and difficult to watch means that it's succeeded. I mean, that's the point to horror movies, right? They're not supposed to be comfortable. I think that the biggest point where I start to take issue with this movie is, quite simply, that it asks me to identify with the people committing the most atrocious acts, which is something that very few torture porn movies do. You can watch something like Funny Games without feeling quite as dirty because there's always that distance between you and the villains. That just isn't present here. And maybe that distance shouldn't be there. I mean, you are enjoying a movie where innocent people are being tortured just the same. You're still cheering on that villain when you buy Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees merch. So is it really such a leap to sympathize and identify with the monsters so overtly as this? The enjoyment of horror movies, especially to the extent of someone like, well, me, will always be a little questionable, no matter how you try to explain it to yourself. What kind of person intentionally fills their time with watching people get maimed and tortured? What about that is fun to us? I'm not passing judgment, by the way. I'd be a little hypocritical to do that, considering I don't know, run a horror YouTube channel. But these are the sorts of questions that this movie made me ask, and I don't really have answers for any of them. Outside of that, this movie's style is noticeably different from the first one, in the sort of way that I could see someone liking one movie and not the other. Personally, I'm more of a fan of House of a Thousand Corpses, but I've always been more partial to Tobe Hooper's style than Quentin Tarantino's, and I can still recognize this as a well-made film that fulfills everything it sets out to do. All in all, I would recommend this movie, but only to the right crowd. If you're squeamish or easily offended, I would recommend skipping this one. I wouldn't even suggest checking this one out if you've seen other torture porn flicks and are expecting something similar. In fact, the highest praise that I can give The Devil's Rejects is this. It is the most gruesome, most effective, and most thought-provoking in its genre that I have seen to date. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click that little bell thingy to get notified, because next time we are finishing this franchise off with a review of 3 from Hell, and you won't want to miss it. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and while you're down there, why don't you leave me a comment? Let me know what you think the most effective torture porn movie is. Thank you so much for watching, my pets. Love you.